On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Michel Temer, President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Senhor Miroslav.
Dear Miroslav Lajczak, President of the United Nations General Assembly, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations Organization, ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, heads of government, and heads of delegations, ladies and gentlemen at large. First of all, I wish to congratulate the President of the General Assembly for his recent election. Mr. President, you can certainly count on the ongoing support of the Brazilian delegation. It also gives me great pleasure to greet the Secretary General in a language that is common to both of us, Portuguese. Dear Secretary General, may I once again reiterate my best wishes for continued success in your mandate at the helm of the UN. Mr. President, many have been the challenges facing the United Nations ever since it was founded. And we all know that the aspirations of its founders have not been entirely fulfilled. But the fact is, nevertheless, that in the past 70+ years, the UN has continuously stood for and represented hope. The fact is that the UN has continuously represented the possibility, the prospects for a more just world, a world of peace and prosperity, a world where no one has to subject oneself to discrimination, to oppression, or to extreme poverty, a world where production and consumption patterns are fully in line with the well-being of both present and future generations. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, the UN has as such affirmed itself as a special forum for building this world to which we all aspire. And the task at hand requires proper methods and a sense of realism without ever losing sight of our ideals. At this time in history, marked by so much uncertainty and instability, we need more diplomacy, more negotiating, not less. We need more of the multilateral system and more dialogue, not less. Today, we certainly need the UN more than before. And I'm talking about a UN that is increasingly legitimate and effective. Accordingly, together with so many other countries, we advocate that it is imperative to reform the United Nations organization, particularly the need to expand the Security Council so as to align it with the reality of the 21st century. It is absolutely pressing that we be able to hear the vast majority of voices of this assembly. Mr. President, it is not reasonable to assume that ideas that already have proven mistaken in the past may now yield good fruits. We reject exacerbated forms of nationalism. We do not believe in protectionism as a way out or a potential solution to economic difficulties. Difficulties that actually require effective answers so as to successfully tackle the deep causes of social exclusion. The quest for development in all of its dimensions should ultimately guide our collective action. Brazil's commitment towards sustainable development is top on our agenda. As such, it cuts through our public policies and our foreign action. At the chair of the Portuguese-speaking community of countries, for example, we have chosen the 2030 development agenda as the main driver of our efforts in that forum. On all fronts, Brazil has sought to give its contribution to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. a contribution that inevitably includes tackling climate change. We shall remain committed to advocating the Paris Agreement. Last year, right here in New York, on behalf of Brazil, I deposited Brazil's ratification instrument in support of the Paris Agreement. This is a matter that cannot possibly be postponed. We must act now. My country, and I am pleased to say this, is at the very forefront of the movement towards a low-carbon economy. Clean and renewable energy in Brazil accounts for more than 40% of our energy mix, and that is 3 times more than the world's average. We are leaders in hydropower and bioenergy. Ladies and gentlemen, Brazil is proud to have the largest tropical forest coverage on the planet. Deforestation is a matter of concern to us, particularly in the Amazonian region. It is an issue on which we have focused attention and to which we have allocated funds and resources. And I have good news to you, i.e. the fact that the most recent data available for last year already show a more than 20% reduction in deforestation in the Amazonian region. We have, therefore, resumed the right path, and we shall persist in it. Yet another driver of development is trade. We are committed to an international trade system that is open and rules-based, a system that is ultimately centered on the World Trade Organization and its dispute settlement mechanism. In the upcoming Buenos Aires ministerial meeting of the WTO in December, we will once again have to face up to old pending issues. And these are pending issues that have proved detrimental mainly to developing countries. We will have to make progress on access to markets for agricultural goods, as well as on eliminating trade-distortive agricultural subsidies. We do trust that together we will rise to the occasion and be able to deliver good results. All of these efforts converge to foster our overarching purpose, i.e., to ensure opportunities will be available to all and everywhere. Mr. President, tomorrow I will have the honor of signing the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Brazil was one of the countries that joined the task of drafting the treaty. It will certainly be a historical moment. We reiterate our call for nuclear powers to take on additional disarmament obligations. In this regard, Brazil expresses herself authoritatively as a country that, while mastering nuclear technology, has voluntarily given up owning nuclear weapons. Brazil expressed herself authoritatively as a country whose constitution itself bans the use of nuclear technology for non-peaceful purposes. A country that was at the very origin of the Tlatelolco Treaty, which half a century ago established denuclearization of Latin America and the Caribbean, a country that, working together with its South American and African neighbors, has turned the South Atlantic into an area free of nuclear weapons, a country that has worked with Argentina, for example, to establish a binational nuclear safeguards mechanism, which has become a benchmark for the world at large. I'm sure you will agree with me. As we celebrate the achievement of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Arms or Weapons, one must, however, recognize that there are lingering issues of real concern on the peace and security agenda. The recent nuclear and missile tests on the Korean Peninsula constitute a serious threat to which none of us can possibly be indifferent. Brazil condemns these acts on the strongest possible terms. It is urgent to engage in steps towards a peaceful solution to the current situation, the consequences of which are imponderable. In the Middle East, if I may say so, talks between Israel and Palestine are currently ground to a halt. As a friend of both Palestinians and Israelis, Brazil continues to favor the two-state solution formula, living in peace and security within the internationally and mutually agreed borders. In Syria, ladies and gentlemen, despite the de-escalation of the past few months, we are still witnessing a conflict of dramatic humanitarian consequences. The solution to be sought out in Syria is essentially political in nature and can no longer be postponed. Likewise, in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Yemen, in Mali, or in the Central African Republic, wars have caused intolerable suffering that has obviously gone way beyond national borders. Let us visit and walk through the fields of refugees and displaced people in Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Kenya. Let us hear the stories of those who have lost their fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters. Families that have been dragged away by irrational conflicts that seem to know no limits. Conflicts that are truly unacceptable and that have all too often taken place on the wrong side of humanitarian law. Our Secretary General is right. Let us work to reinvigorate conflict prevention mechanisms. And prevention involves diplomacy, and it also includes development. It is key and essential to recognize the clear-cut connection between security and development. A clear recognition of this connection has guided Brazil's participation in the UN stabilization mission in Haiti, the MINUSTAH mission. At this point in time, when the MINUSTAH completes its mandate, the international community must uphold its commitment to the Haitian people. Brazil will certainly do so. In South America, Colombia is currently overcoming a conflict that has lasted for more than 50 years on end. Brazil will remain a fully resolute and committed partner in this effort. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, from Barcelona to Kabul, from Alexandria to Manchester, repeated episodes of cowardly violence do not allow us to forget the evil of terrorism. It is an evil that has fed itself on different forms of fundamentalism and exclusion, to which no country is immune. It is even more imperative that we join efforts, given terrorism's ability to adapt itself to current times and different terrains. We shall not be cornered away by terror, nor shall we allow it to weaken our belief in freedom and intolerance. Likewise, ladies and gentlemen, transnational crime in so many of our countries undermines security and the peace of mind of individuals and families. Only through coordinated and properly concerted action will we effectively tackle trafficking in persons, arms, drugs, and money laundering. It was in this spirit that Brazil organized back in November 2016 a ministerial meeting of South American countries on border security. And it is in that same spirit that we'll keep on cooperating with countries from all over the world in efforts to successfully tackle organized crime. Mr. President, regrettably, however, human rights violations remain a recurrent fact, both regarding civil and political rights, as well as economic, social, and cultural rights. It is necessary to ensure that everywhere individuals be able to live in dignity according to their own convictions and choices. Brazil is a country of deep-seated liberties, a country that made itself and still does so amidst diversity in terms of ethnic background, culture, creed, and thought. More than anything else, it is from this diversity that we derive our strength as a nation. We reject racism, we reject xenophobia and all forms of discrimination. Brazil is party to the main international human rights treaties. We are also party to the Inter-American Human Rights Court, to the International Criminal Court as well. We have extended a permanent invitation to the UN independent rapporteurs. Currently, we have one of the world's most advanced laws on refugees. Also, we have recently updated our migration law, anchored on the principle of humanitarian response and aid. We have granted humanitarian visas to both Haitian and Syrian nationals. Likewise, we have received thousands of migrants and refugees from Venezuela. The human rights situation in Venezuela has regrettably deteriorated continuously. We stand by and support the Venezuelan people, to whom we are linked by brotherly connections. There is no more room for alternatives to democracy. And that is precisely what we have asserted in Mercosur, and it is also what we will keep on advocating. Mr. President, Brazil is currently going through a period of decisive and sweeping changes. With structural reforms, we are overcoming an unprecedented economic crisis. We are currently restoring fiscal balance and, by extension, economic credibility. Jobs are being created again. We have recovered the state's ability to carry out key social policies in a country like ours. We have learned the lesson, and we are applying in practice this elementary rule, i.e., the rule that without fiscal responsibility, social responsibility is nothing but empty rhetoric. The new Brazil that is now emerging from recent reforms is a country that is more open to the world. It is this attitude of openness that we bring to the UN, and which we have also taken to Mercosur, G20, BRICS, IPSA, and to all other fora in which we take part. It is this attitude of openness that we have adopted to each of our partners in our region and beyond it. South America is our immediate neighborhood. And for that reason, we have worked for a prosperous and democratic South America. We have worked for increasing convergence of integration processes in Latin America and the Caribbean. A significant example thereof are the currently closer ties between Mercosur and the Pacific Alliance. Together, the countries of these two different groups make up a market of nearly 470 million people, which accounts for more than 90% of Latin America's GDP. Africa, in turn, is a continent to which we are united by strong historical and cultural ties. Africa is a continent where we wish to have increasing cooperation initiatives and increasing partnerships for development. With Europe, we have cultivated long-standing friendship ties, and there we have worked to boost trade and investment flows. Likewise, in Asia and the Pacific region, the most vibrant hub of the global economy, we have stepped up our relations with both traditional partners and new ones. We have also opened up new trade fronts with Asia and the Pacific. Thus has been our foreign policy, a truly universalist foreign policy. And, Mr. President, the fact is that the most universal of all fora we have and can count on is this General Assembly. Here, we can all benefit from the broadest and the most pluralistic array of perspectives. Here, we find the parameters and the standards that govern our respectful living together. Here, we shall become more united nations, aiming at the ultimate development of our peoples, the dignity of our citizens, and the security of our planet. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil for the statement just made. May I request representatives to remain seated while we greet the President.